Hey everybody, this is Elle Nagy from the Unapologetic Woman Empowerment Dynasty, and you're listening to the Unapologetic Woman Podcast, the show for women who choose to live their legacies, unleashed, unlimited, and unapologetic. If this is a space you are curious about, visit unapologetic-woman.com. Today we're talking about authenticity in business and reframing imperfections with Julie DeLucca-Collins. Julie is a business strategist, authority mentor. She's an author, a TEDx speaker, and a podcaster, and a Tiny Habits certified coach. She helps passionate and purposeful women go confidently in the direction of their dreams while impacting the world. Thanks for joining us. This is Julie DeLucca-Collins.
Ready.
Awesome. So, first of all, thank you for saying yes to coming onto the podcast. I am still in awe of and humbled by and expanding the knowing of we are all equal and different. So intellectually, I 100% always believed it, but conditionally, we are not conditioned to understand that we are all equal and different. And so I still seem to be so surprised when women such as yourself that I meet and go, holy macaroni, how did I get this firecracker powerhouse fabulousness? And then you say yes to come onto my podcast. So thank you for being here today, Julie. I am absolutely excited. I can't wait to see where this conversation is going to go.
My friend, thank you for having me. I feel exactly the same way. I get giddy when I meet incredible women like you, and we seem to have this synergy. And then you say, hey, want to be on my podcast? And I'm thinking, oh, yes, me, of course. So I am excited to be here. Thank you.
You have to wonder, what will it take for that last piece of social conditioning to finally start being released from the collective consciousness in the pedestal mentality? And, you know, I want to say this to everybody. We are all conditioned to the pedestal mentality, all of us. It is a process to peel that off our minds so that we can finally get back to, actually, nobody is ahead of us because we are all on our own journeys. Nobody knows more about us than what we do. Nobody has the blueprint for our lives. It's within ourselves. And we all get to play because we are all genius creators. And we are just here to have a fun human experience and evolve consciousness in the process.
Absolutely. I love what you're saying. And I think that it will take a lot because it is conditioning, and we created this automation for ourselves that our society feeds into.
We didn't press record when we started the conversation. So sorry to the listeners, because I think that when you said the automation, that's an important part of what we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Is how we seem to have created an automated culture of connection, of business, of life. Like I was introduced to somebody earlier this week, and we were going to and fro in trying to get a time in the calendar for us to connect. And I said to her, oh my God, do you remember the days when we just used to pick up our phones and make a simple phone call and go, when are you available for a meeting? Instead of zillion emails of calendar links being shared and things not working out. What do you think is, so there's benefit and contrast in everything that's being created. What do you see as some of the benefits of the automated culture of society, and what do you think is some of the contrast that's being created by the automated society?
Automated society, in my book, takes away the human touch. Obviously, that's the most glaring thing that happens. But I think that we allow individuals to hide behind automation and not practice being brave. Because sometimes, whether it's picking up the phone or actually having a conversation, if we automate the process or we can hide behind email or social media, then we are taking away from our ability to step into maybe stepping in and saying, I can do this, I can show up, or I can, do the thing that normally requires a little more courage.
And it's interesting for me as we invite the word courage into this conversation. Before we had all the automated processes, applications, expectations, it was a case of courageously connecting with other human beings, but not thinking of it as courage. It was just what we did.
Mm.
You want to have a conversation, you need to have the conversation. There's
Right.
no sending out mass emails or anything. And one of my observations is that in the process, we are also creating a culture of non-response. So people,
Mm,
for a lot of the times when they receive an email or a message, they don't necessarily respond because in the back of their minds, it's, oh no, this is just automated. They won't read my response. But then when we get out of the automated situation, there's still a non-response.
yeah.
Have you observed this as well?
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned this. I shared an email last night to my email list. And yes, it was an automated email. And I typically tend to be the type of person who shares from her heart. And there was something I was sharing about that I really took some time to write about it because I wanted to process it. And I wasn't necessarily expecting 100 people to say, wow, Julie, thank you for sharing that. But I thought surely there would be at least one that would come back and say, and this morning, granted, I've had one of these mornings where meetings have been back to back to back, right? And I have not finished going through my email, but I haven't necessarily seen at least a couple of responses to say, hey, thanks for sharing, or wow, I feel what you're saying. So I think for me, we have to learn to, number one, be okay with knowing that people take for granted, right? That this might be really you behind the automation, that you're trying to infuse humanity into the automation. And for many people, it's interesting that we become so accustomed to the automation that we don't want to look past it. And it happens to me too, by the way. Many times I'll get an email and I think, oh, that's really great. And I'm thinking, oh, is that a formula they're using? Or I need to really stop as well. So I don't fault people for not necessarily responding. But it's interesting how we have to learn to kind of navigate this new world.
Mm. And one of my things that I do is I regularly unsubscribe from things. And
Mhm.
I've noticed a trend of people who know you and then they launch their stuff. And so very lovingly, they add you to their mailing list. Uh,
Mhm.
and I very lovingly unsubscribe because I understand it's costing them money to actually, for me to be on their
Right.
mailing list. Nothing is for free, people. And so I
No, for sure.
unsubscribe if I know that I'm not going to be using your services, I'm not going to be contributing to your wealth creation in your business. I respectfully unsubscribe. And it has been a game changer for me because I think
Yeah.
when we are consistently subscribing to all of these things, we are in fact becoming very disconnected even to the present moment because I look at being bombarded with emails and kind of go, I don't have time to read this. Just file 13, later, later,
Mhm.
later,
Mhm.
later. but later never happens. And then you end up with this massive file of later that feels completely overwhelming,
Yes.
uninteresting, and it creates panic in me. So
Yeah.
I just learned, if I subscribe to something and I don't read 2 emails, I unsubscribe.
I love that. I love that. And I have to say, for the people who are listening to us and they said, "What? She's going to unsubscribe?" I want you to celebrate the people who unsubscribe, because that creates more expansion and room for the people who do need you. And that's where a lot of people, we've been again conditioned to vanity metrics. We've been conditioned to a lot of this numbers, because, oh, look how successful I am because I have 500,000 people in my email list. I would rather have a small, committed, real super fans in my list who listen to everything I say and who will interact and who will find meaning in what I'm sharing, than people who are just subscribing and just filing it away or deleting without reading.
To stay on because of a sense of obligation, because I know
Yeah.
you and I like you, and I don't want you to feel like I am rejecting you, that I'm
Mm,
unsubscribing from you, the person. I don't want to hurt your
yeah.
feelings. But unsubscribing is never from you, it is from the service that you are
Hmm.
providing that is just not relevant to my business.
Yeah.
And I think that's a huge part of it, where especially women get really hung up in
Yeah.
that, well, you're unsubscribing from me, my feelings get hurt, we can't be friends anymore. And I'm going, no, no, I don't want you on my email list if you never
Hmm.
implement anything that I share, or if
Right.
there's no value, tangible value in your life of what I'm sharing. Please unsubscribe from me. Don't stay on my mailing list out of some sense of friendship or obligation.
Obligation. Yes, absolutely. And by the way, I think that this is kind of a fine line too, right? Because as women, we have a very difficult time separating the business, the personal from the business. And yet, the other side of the coin is, I feel strongly that as business owners, our brand has to be a personal brand. It can't be generic. So, what is the line, right? Not take it too personally, because it's not against you. It's just not what they need or the service that they desire from you, right? They still like you as a person. So we need to learn to not take that personally, but also understand that our business has to be infused with who we are and our personal brand that define us and separates us from the pack.
So maybe we go into this direction, in that we are not the business, but the business is a vehicle of expression of our standards, our values, our genius gifts, our connection to weaving the tapestry of creativity in our world.
Mhm.
But it's not us. And I think
Yes.
that that is what a lot of women gets hung up on. So when I say we, I am whole, running a business is part of who I choose to be in this
Mhm.
lifetime. Building a business and a legacy is part of who I choose to be in this lifetime. But I am not the business. The business is separate from me, and it's just a vehicle. I feel like a lot of the times, it almost, since the personal brand came into consciousness, people have taken that a little bit too far, in my opinion,
Agreed.
as well. And for the most part, it's not authentic. And for the most part, it becomes this PowerPoint,
Yes.
photoshopped kind of experience of who we are, which it was never supposed to be, right?
Mhm.
But it is work. Any profession that we do, whether it's in your own business or within a company structure, is simply a vehicle for self-evolution, self-actualization, self-expression, and a setting of a standard for ourselves in this world.
Yeah.
Get that. It's so liberating, but we also then take so much more pride in what we
Mhm.
are creating. Because for me, the question is this really exceptional? Because if me as a person desire to be my most exceptional self in this
Yeah.
lifetime, then everything that I create needs to be a standard of exceptional. Is that coming through in my company brand?
Oh, you're hitting the nail on the head. And I think that for many individuals, we get a little prescription and a little bit of what we said in the very beginning, that we're told as an entrepreneur, do this, follow this, get this. And yet there is no infusion of the person behind it. We're just following the script. The next thing too that I think happens and I see this mainly with my women clients, we take it incredibly personal. When we hear a no, we take it personal when someone says, hey, not for me, maybe not today. And we make it mean that we're not good enough when it's not about us. It's about the brand, it's about the service, it's about the business, which is if someone says, hey, Julie, no, thank you. I'm going to unsubscribe, or no, I don't need a business coach, or I'm not looking for a speaker. It's not about Julie being rejected. It's about that person not being in a place in which they need or desire what I have to offer. And it's different from who I am. And that's where people tend to get stuck as well.
Mm. Do you think that part of that is oh, let's just really poke the hornet's nest here. So a couple of things come up for me. One is the fact that I hear so many people speaking of their life purpose and then believe
Mhm.
their life purpose is their work instead of their life purpose is to live and to evolve as a human being, and the purpose of their business is the service that it's providing. So for me, that comes up really strongly, and that almost a lot, especially women, feel that if they don't have a business purpose, that they don't have a purpose for their lives,
Yes.
which is two completely distinctly different aspects. And
Agreed.
that for me is a huge thing, especially for women. Like, you are enough. Your purpose in this life is to just have the most extraordinary life experience in which you as a person grow. And that's the purpose of your life.
Yeah,
Any other
absolutely.
purpose is an externalized purpose, but we can't be so hung up on that that we don't take care of ourselves, our personal growth, our self-actualization, which is a cop-out that we have
Mm,
been conditioned with in this
yeah.
lifetime, especially as women. You can be completely overwhelmed, underwhelmed, going to pieces. But honey, as long as you show up for the kids, for the husband, for the clients, you are fantastic. And I'm going, no, no, no,
Yes.
doesn't actually work that way. You first,
Hmm.
your vibration first, then
Yes.
everybody else. But it seems like a hard pill for women to swallow.
Hmm.
Put themselves first.
Absolutely. And I think that because we see our parents, we see our moms doing the same thing. And we see our moms deriving their value from the external as opposed to the internal. I remember when my mom, she must have been about my age. She worked for a company for a very long time. She worked really hard. She was a single mom. So did it, everything she did was for her daughters. Number one, when you would ask her, and she's a beautiful woman, even to this age, right? But when you would ask her, hey, are you dating? In her 30s, her 40s, she's like, no, I have daughters. I don't want to bring a stranger. And I would always say, Mom, but we're not always going to be with you. And she put us as her daughters first. Second, when she had her job, again, her career, and when that career ended, she found herself losing that identity that she had created. Fast forward, when I got laid off at the beginning of the pandemic, I had started, and interestingly enough, this was my own personal growth. I had started to question, who am I without the title of my job? I was also turning 50 at the beginning of the pandemic. And I started to question, who am I that is not defined by age? And that was my journey. When I lost my job, it was hard. It was sort of this navigating this uncharted waters for me. But I realized that I needed to learn to swim in the waters where I wasn't defined by the title, by the role, by the age. And I needed to continue to pour into Julie, the human, the person, that when she is in this great place where she's pouring into herself, she's learning for herself, she's growing, she's challenging herself, then I show up in other places in a better manner. I am a better wife. I'm a better daughter. And when I don't do the work for myself, then the places and the people that I show up for I show up in a very limited way.
What comes to mind for me as you were talking is the energy of the martyr, which we as women were raised in, is an energy of diminishment, self-diminishment, because we are literally putting ourselves onto others and then say, you are my reason for everything.
Mm.
But what we don't understand is it is a weight that we are putting on others, because now unconsciously, not only are they responsible for themselves, they now feel responsible for us as women.
Yes.
They are feeling responsible for our happiness, for our sense of completion, for our sense of worth. That's a really heavy burden. And I just want to have so much compassion in this conversation, because this is not
Mm-hmm.
done consciously. Our mothers were all raised like this. We were all raised in the
Yes,
same responsibility, and you don't know what you don't know. For those of us
absolutely.
who have come through on the other side through our own personal journeys, we kind of look and go, wow, okay, now it makes so much sense. But if you haven't come out on the other side, you need to have compassion with yourself and just understand it's just how we have been conditioned. But
Yes.
when we reclaim ourselves, when we reclaim all the pieces of ourselves, we can show up in our full power, because we have not given away our power or put our power upon others under some warped sense of service, which means we no longer need others to carry us. We are no longer taking from others' energy to feed us that which we have abandoned within ourselves. And we get to bring our most beautiful, most radiant, most powerful self to every single table. That for me
Yes.
is true love.
Mm. I'm loving this conversation, by the way. I feel that we're definitely kindred spirits. I think that this is a conversation that the more that we have, we could perhaps provoke possibilities for other people. And by the way, this is not my phrase. I have to give credit to a friend of mine who uses that phrase, but I have fallen in love with being able to be curious, listen to something that is different from what we've been conditioned to learn and live in, and then find how these conversations can then provoke those possibilities for us.
And I also want to say this: it's about being willing to lean into the diverse mindedness of other
Mhm.
people. It's about leaning into the discomfort of having a conversation or even listening into a conversation that we don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
And my thing is always, I don't need anybody to agree or to disagree with me. I am simply sharing where I am finding myself on my
Mhm.
own personal journey. Ooh, that will either, as you say, provoke a new possibility of thought within somebody else, or cement their conviction in where they are finding themselves. And I am good with either one of these.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's one of the reasons I created the soiree space. And it was so interesting for me to see powerful women come together, and how long it took for us to build the trust to have really deep, meaningful conversations where we delightfully agree to disagree with each other, but we allow ourselves to stay open minded in the conversation. So, in this, we get to experience life through the experience of another without having to make our own experience wrong, without
Mm.
having to change our minds. Because I think that is what's really started happening in society. There is this fear that there's a right and a wrong. And if
Yeah.
I am wrong, then I have to release my beliefs to have yours over imprint on me. Or else I have to convince you to release your beliefs and I have to over imprint on you. And the moment we come at any conversation with this belief system that there's only one right and the other is wrong, we close ourselves off to everything.
Mhm. Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think that I have for many years been a proponent of conversations. I think that we're losing the art of listening and sharing, because, again, there isn't anyone, even if we're on one side of the coin and another, we're not going to be 100% in full agreement with somebody else, because we're bringing in our values, we're bringing in our culture, we're bringing in our own personality and interpretation. And then we become afraid because we think that the conversations with someone that has a difference of opinion is something that has to be antagonistic, when it doesn't. It can be a conversation to learn, to hold space for somebody else, and to say, wow, I did not understand that, I get it. Or, wow, I don't get it, but okay, I accepted that. There, just like we as humans in the moment of grief can have two emotions live at the same time, grief and happiness, joy and sadness, the same way with conversations and points of view. Two points of view could live together and be okay in the same space. There is no necessity to change, to create a win, because there is no wins. The win is in knowing who we are and standing in who we are without having to shift because of somebody else, or trying to shift somebody else to who we are, because they'll never be us.
One of the things that I've learned in having controversial conversations is to really appreciate my differentness, and how I'm experiencing the world very differently from, I would say,
Mhm.
95% of people at this time. And I get to appreciate their experience even more. So the more I appreciate my own experience, the more I appreciate their experience, and I appreciate the differenceness in our experiences. And for the most part, I kiss myself and go, "Oh, well done, Elle, getting here." Because oh my God, I'm so glad I'm not there. I'm so happy that I'm not having that experience, because a lot of it is suffering, a lot of it is really hard.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't need to make it wrong for the other person. I don't need to say to them, oh,
Oh,
but if you just come over to my side, it is like this. Because I kind of go, no,
yeah.
I had to go through an initiation to get to where
Mhm.
I'm at.
Yes. And by the way, Elle, I have to tell you, in full disclosure, I was not always like this. When I met my husband and I have been married 12 years, but we met and I was 21 and he was 20. And we could not be more different in opinions, in upbringing, in background, you name it. Um, Over the course of the years, we were married to other people and we learned the art of agreeing to disagree, but being respectful about each other's belief system, respectful and open to, loving or accepting the person as they are with all of their differences and backgrounds. Fast forward when we married, there were still some differences. And by the way, I am a Yankee fan and he is a Red Sox fan. So for anyone listening, you know that you can't get more different than that. But the reality is that there is a mutual respect and acceptance, and there is even a sense of joy in knowing that there's a little bit of differences in there as well. So I've come a long way, and I'm giving the example of the sports teams, the baseball sports teams is one example, but there were so many different things. Now, over the course of the years, I never tried to advocate to change, to try to sway him to believe the same things that I did. But life itself put him on a path that he himself did the internal work and said, hey, you know that thing we talked about so many years ago? I get it. I think you're right. And I love hearing that as a woman, number one, from a husband. But number two, I take joy in knowing that the greater joy is from him doing his own internal work and shifting, not because he wanted to be accepted by me, but because that was what he needed to do for himself. In the same way, I've changed and evolved to certain things. I live in Connecticut. I never thought I'd live in Connecticut. I always thought I would live in New York City, right? I'm a city girl, but I've changed and evolved and accepted, what a wonderful life things could be outside of the city. So there's always opportunity for you to shift.
That is so powerful. And I love how you, unlike many women, and again, I used to be one of them as well, so please, I'm not preaching, um, feel responsible for their partner's evolution and growth, and especially personal growth. The
Yeah.
amount of personal development books that I used to give my ex-husband is just astonishing. And I can say, in all honesty, he never read a single one of them. Um,
Oh.
and my current partner is not in personal development at all. And I love that about him. And I have no desire to change him or to evolve him or to go, let me show you the way. If you read this book, then you'll get
Yeah.
it. But instead, just having these really delicious conversations, which for the most part, he'll go, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm really good with that. I don't have to teach him. I don't have to explain to him. I don't have to change him. I don't have to grow him. I don't have to evolve him.
Yeah.
So, which brings me to the question of all questions, Julie, because you have explained that you didn't pop out of the vagina like this. What does it mean to you to be an unapologetic woman?
As an unapologetic woman, I have to embrace my imperfections, which is the hardest thing in the world. And first, stop apologizing to myself because that's the hardest thing. And we do it so naturally. And when we do that and we put ourselves down, then we end up showing up very poorly in the world. because we're broken, because we're hurt, because we're looking for love and acceptance. And being unapologetic is realizing that, hey, I need love and acceptance, but I'm going to work on myself first. And then I will still show up into the world a little broken and imperfect, but I will be okay with being broken and imperfect because I've gotten that acceptance. And it's the daily work. Elle. It's not perfect at all, but that's the daily work. And that's what it means to me, that I don't want to apologize to the world for my brokenness and my imperfections.
Because we are all perfectly imperfect, because
Yeah.
nobody really, as a woman, there is no template for what is the perfect woman, by the way. So isn't it
Mm-hmm.
interesting that we have a story that says we are imperfect? Because what are we even holding ourselves up to? This is
Yeah.
interesting. So not really thought of it this way, but what is it that we are holding ourselves to and go, compared to this, I am imperfect?
Yes.
Isn't that an interesting story? Actually,
It is an interesting
something
thought. And
I
I
want to
think that,
delve into after this for myself is like, what am I holding myself hostage to say that I am imperfect? Compared to what? What is this blueprint
yeah.
in my mind that I have fabricated, that when I compare myself to this, and this maybe is why we never feel good enough, because there is no perfect image of what the perfect woman is. So we've set ourselves up for failure.
Hmm. We're following a blueprint of something that nobody has really finished crafting. And by the way, the blueprint for Elle is different from the blueprint from Julie. And we think, okay, let me follow this blueprint. I have to be a certain I have to be feminine. Maybe no, maybe I need to be strong. Maybe I need to do that. And it's a moving target. It's like us trying to become perfect or trying to get to the line in the horizon, where the line in the horizon is always moving.
Yes, as it should be, because we are constantly evolving. We're not dead yet. We're not done yet. We are not done evolving, even as this form of consciousness called Elle. And
Mm.
maybe if we started changing our language for ourselves, and instead of saying, I am imperfect, say, I am incomplete in my evolution for
Ooh,
this lifetime.
I
That
need to write that down.
game. I need to write
I am
that down.
incomplete. I love that.
I am incomplete in my evolution during this lifetime.
Yeah.
Taking a moment to call all extraordinary trailblazers, visionaries, and possibilitarians. Get ready to unleash your inner brilliance with a touch of elegance and a dash of sass. It's time to dive into the art of self-leadership, a journey designed exclusively for phenomenal female founders, artists, and leaders like you. Hey gorgeous, yes, you with the unstoppable spirit and the audacious dreams. You're not here to play small, you're here to craft a legacy that turns heads and sparks revolutions. Through the art of self-leadership, we're about to recalibrate your entire existence. Say goodbye to those old belief patterns that whispered about self-sacrifice. Let's dial into your soul's deepest truth, your self-actualization, and do it with the grace of a ballroom dance and the confidence of a catwalk strut. Your journey, my dear, is a masterpiece painted in the hues of your vibrancy, catered to your desires, and fueled by your fiery potential. We're not just offering a consultation. We're inviting you to a tete-a-tete with your next monumental triumph. Are you ready to RSVP for this journey? The link is flashing like a neon sign in the podcast episode description, or you can saunter over to our elegant domain, unapologetic-women.com. Darling, your unapologetic self-leadership journey begins now. Toast to your legacy with sophistication, embrace your inner sass with style, and stride forward with a flair that's unmistakably you. The art of self-leadership is your backstage pass to a life that's glamorous, impactful, and unapologetically authentic. Ladies, let's make them stare. Your greatness is about to hit the spotlight.
Well, that brings excitement then, doesn't it?
It
Because
does. It
all the
does.
weight of us, all the weight of us. I'm not dead yet. I'm not done yet. I'm not complete in my evolution for this lifetime. I am incomplete. I am a work in progress. And I get to either do it as a conscious work in progress, whereby I dictate how I want to evolve, or an unconscious work in progress,
Yeah.
whereby I allow my environment to dictate how I evolve. Either way, I'm not dead yet, so I'm not done yet. I am still a work in progress. I am
Absolutely.
incomplete. I'm not imperfect.
Yeah, so good. This has been what a great conversation. I'm going to listen to this a lot.
So just having a look at the time as well, I always want to be respectful to our listeners. What is it that you take an unapologetic stance for in the world, Julie?
You know, for me is that I'm going to take what I want out of life and live my life to the fullest without being defined by somebody else's expectation for how my life should be lived. We take on people's expectations so easily, and I've done it, but ultimately, I am going to take what I want. I'm going to go for what I want. I'm going to live my life in the way that is cohesive with my values, with my dreams, with my aspirations. And I'm not apologizing for that.
I will share this very, very briefly as well. I have come to the realization that I projected expectations onto other people of me, which was way higher than their actual expectations of
It's true.
me. I always raise the bar. I always raise the
Mhm.
bar. And so when I meet somebody, in my mind, I put in, you have this incredible expectation of me, which for the most part people really don't have. And for the most part, people really don't think about us from day to day because they're so busy living their own lives. And yet we can
Mhm.
so easily create this prison of pressure on ourselves and then go, well, it's because everybody has this expectation of me. But no, that's my projected expectation, which is always greater than their actual expectation, because their expectation of me cannot be greater than their expectation for themselves.
Absolutely. I think that that is the key that many people forget. I love it. I have to say there's such joy in knowing that, you know, when we at the end of the day, and I'd like to equate this to the Camino de Santiago, if I may. For many of your listeners, I've done part of the Camino de Santiago in several stages. And when you are traveling as a pilgrim on this journey, you leave your morning, wherever town you're starting, you put your backpack on, and then you begin on this road. And as you're walking down the road, you meet different people. And sometimes you will meet up with them again, maybe at lunchtime, dinner time. But, you know, they're not arriving at their destination necessarily wondering why you're not there, unless you said you were going to be. They're really worried about, you know, do I have a bed? Do I have my next meal? Am my backpack, you know, too heavy? Do I need to get some rest? Most people are really focusing on themselves. And yes, they focus on you when you're there, but they're not expecting anything other than you being part of their journey. And that's what we are here to be. We intersect each other's journeys, but ultimately the we make up a story that other people have expectations for us, that or desires for us, when it's really us who is trying to say, I must be or do or have because that is what that person wants from me. Really focus on being on the road, focus on being in your own journey, focus on putting one foot in front of the other and being present. And when people come into your life and that intersection of meeting someone comes in, rejoice in that moment, but don't go in it out of the expectation that you're either going to give because they expect it from you, or that you're there to receive because that's what they're there to do as well. The sooner we start to believe that and understand that, I think that the more joy there is in this journey that we call life.
Beautiful. I think the message today is bringing it back to ourselves, bringing everything back to ourselves, from our purpose to our joy, to responsibility for our power, to responsibility for our focus on ourselves, to responsibility of the expectations we have of our own selves, to the presence of ourselves on our journey.
Beautifully said.
Returning to ourselves. And then from there, really showing up as ourselves unapologetically and allowing people to have whatever experience they desire to have of us. Not responsible for how they experience us, but we are responsible for how we show up in life.
Indeed. I love that.
Any parting words for our listeners today, Julie?
You know, my biggest I would say feeling for individuals and why I started this journey in particular, whether it be through my business or through the interactions that we may have at a restaurant, at a grocery store, is that I want you to know that you are not always going to get it right, but you're going to have the opportunity to make it right for yourself and how you show up in the world. And that every day is an opportunity to work toward going confidently, which is, you know, the name of my business, Go Confidently. But I want you to know that confidence is not about the feeling, but about the practice. And it's about the intersection of learning to take that step, even when you don't know where that step is leading you. And that's how you will become more confident and you will start to practice at being the imperfect you that we're all created to be.
Can I refine that a little bit?
Do it. I love it.
For me, confidence has grown exponentially when I take the step because I said I was going to take the step. Not because I feel ready to take the step, but keeping your word to yourself is the fastest way of becoming confident. And so don't say things, even to yourself, especially to yourself, unless you are going to keep your word to yourself.
So good.
And I want to challenge you because you used the word imperfect again. And I want to challenge that word for all of us and just see what happens when we continuously catch ourselves using it. I use that word as well, and just replace it with incomplete.
I love that challenge.
We are incomplete. I want to challenge all our listeners to just catch themselves how often they say that they are imperfect, and just feel what happens when you replace the word imperfect with incomplete.
Challenge accepted, my friend.
And I'd love to hear from our listeners. I'd love to hear from you. How does this land for you? Especially as women, we are uber critical of ourselves. Especially as high achieving women, we are max critical of ourselves. We so love the whole imperfection conversation, and it's a way to make ourselves feel better about ourselves, but it's also a way of keeping ourselves out of the game. So let us know in the comments what happens for you when we replace imperfect with incomplete. And are you taking away from this conversation? Julie,
I love it.
rich. This was good. This was yummy, delicious.
Oh, it was yummy. My favorite kind of conversation is with another just soulful, intelligent woman who is doing the work. So thank you. And by the way, sharing the work so that others see that it's all about doing it and being here and working at it and knowing that we're not alone.
We are not alone. To all our listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. This was another riveting conversation. Please join in on the conversation. We will also have Julie's contact details in the description. Reach out to her, connect with her. She is a phenomenal woman. So blessed that our paths crossed. And thank you for the introductions made. And until next week, remember that we get to live our legacies unleashed, unlimited, and unapologetic. Have an amazing day further wherever you are in the world. Cheers.
Thank you for joining us on another empowering episode of the Unapologetic Woman Podcast. We hope you found this conversation as inspiring as we did. Remember, embracing your strength and authenticity is a journey worth taking, and we're thrilled to be part of it with you. If you've enjoyed our discussions and found value in the stories we share, we have a favor to ask. Your support means the world to us, and there are a couple of simple ways you can make a big difference. First, take a moment to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your words have the power to reach other incredible women like you who are seeking upliftment and insight. By leaving a review, you're helping us create a ripple effect of empowerment that extends far beyond these virtual airwaves. Second, think of the remarkable women in your life who would resonate with our message. Share this podcast with them, whether it's a friend, a family member, a colleague, or even a fellow pioneer you've connected with. Together, we can create a community of unapologetic women who uplift, support, and inspire each other. Stay connected with us on social media at The Unapologetic Woman for updates, behind-the-scenes moments, and engaging conversations. We love hearing from you and building this vibrant community together. As we wrap up this episode, remember that your journey matters, your voice is vital, and your impact is immeasurable. Let's continue rewriting the narrative and embracing our unapologetic selves one episode at a time. Thank you for being part of the Unapologetic Woman movement. Until next time, stay true to yourself, stay unapologetic, and keep dancing to your own tune.